Hey there everyone. Today we're going to learn how to program in JavaScript. Let's get started. Hey there everyone, and welcome to the third and final part of web development with Loop Coding Center. Today we're going to transition and finally move into the third language of the three primary HTML5 languages for modern web development. This third language being JavaScript. JavaScript, unlike the other two, is actually what's considered a full semantic language. Well, not semantic language, it's a full programming language, unlike HTML and CSS, which are semantic and or markup languages. The difference between JavaScript and CSS and HTML is that with HTML and CSS, you're writing in a language that's just trying to interpret words and phrases that you directly put in. Whereas with JavaScript, you can directly manipulate numbers and really write your own programs. Though you can do that with CSS and HTML, it's a lot easier and you practically have to utilize JavaScript inside of those languages to get them to work in that fashion. So today we'll start on our journey of learning how to program using JavaScript, our first object-oriented program through the online course we're offering on specifically this web development series. So today, to start off, I'd like to clear up one misconception that might be that's commonly repeated and is pretty prevalent online. Java and JavaScript are two different languages. The naming scheme is kind of similar because some programmers back in the day had some beef, but really all you need to know as a programmer nowadays is that JavaScript is specifically limited to things that have to do with your browser, web, and or web apps, whereas that stands for JavaScript. But for Java, just pure Java, you'll most likely not find too many of those programs nowadays, unless you're playing the Java version of Minecraft. Otherwise, Java will be usually be something that you'll find as software directly on macOS or directly on Windows. Now, it's important to differentiate these two because they're both object-oriented programming languages and they have similar names. But if you accidentally look up a guide for how to write a certain script in just Java, if you're trying to be lazy, and you end up reading something on Java and not JavaScript, it will be a headache in the future and it will cause a lot more problems than it's worth. So, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and transition into writing our first JavaScript program / script. Let's get going. To begin with JavaScript, before we get into any dictionary definitions and before we really get into types and variables and all of the fun stuff that'll come along with us and all the things we'll learn, I'd like to just write out a simple program to show you exactly what we'll be working with. So, it's a tradition in the world of programming to start your first script as a hello world. So that's exactly what we'll be doing today. So if you follow along, go ahead and type out console.log. And before I finish the rest of the script, I would like to point out that I've changed my setup a bit on Word CodePen, just so that we can best utilize what we'll be practicing with JavaScript. Eventually, we will get to melding HTML and JavaScript together and bring CSS into the mix as well. But for now, we'll go ahead and make sure that JavaScript is the largest window on our setup, and we actually won't need much of a view for these first couple of episodes. So to continue on with the console.log, what I'll do is write console dot, and by dot I mean a period, and then follow it by log. So, following this, we'll go ahead and give this an input. And slowly I'll start introducing this terminology. I'll explain what an input is later, but for now, just to familiarize you, we have an input, and here we'll enter in our variable. So, inside of two parentheses, and then two quotation marks, what we'll do is go ahead and write our first message. Hello world. So with this, we end with a semicolon, and just like in CSS actually. And if in order to actually see what we just did, we'll have to open the inspector window. So I'll right click if I'm on Google Chrome. If you're on Mac OS, you'll also right click on your browser. You can also use the command Control-Shift-I if you're on Windows to open this up. Now, what we'll be looking for in specific is actually this console right here. And with this console, we'll see all these bugs relating to what we have going on with the CodePen site. But if you look right here, our hello world printed out. We called the console and we told it to log the message hello world. And like that, over here we had our code executed. And with that, I'll go into an explanation of exactly what we're manipulating. Wrote this in. Well, what happened was the CodePen, or our CodePen, compiled and or refreshed in order to have the code run for us. When this happened, and it's actually similar to when we would change our HTML or our CSS, the CodePen program reads over each line in each of our scripts. And for our JavaScript, I read the first line, and then hooked us into, or ran the script, which directly communicates with the document object model. Now, that's a term I'm going to be bringing up a lot, because the document object model, just like what we learned with HTML, is the thing that controls what we're looking at on our screen. The document object model determines the elements, their properties, and how they're displayed. So, with JavaScript, we're directly manipulating that document object model through the means of programming. It's kind of like a script tied to a certain character in a game. And in this case, what we did was communicate directly to the DOM, or the DOM, a lot shorter than document object model. And once we've communicated with the DOM, we specifically asked for the function of the console, and within the console, well, the object of the console, and then we specifically asked for the class and or function of log. With that, we can log out, or if you've heard the term logging, it's specifically talking about compiling a set of lines or an output. And with the console.log, we can provide an input, whether it be in the future something that we want back for bug fixes, or to see if our program is working or not. With this, we directly tell the console to log out hello world. With that, the string is interpreted, and again, I'll go over these terms in our next episode. And then finally, we tell the script to stop reading here and read whatever is past that point. With that being the case, we see that our hello world ran through all of these, and here we'll see that other things were running in the background out of our control directly because of CodePen. But with this, we can directly manipulate the DOM in many different ways, including manipulation of the HTML that's already currently on the page, and manipulation of the CSS. Alongside this, we can open up a world of possibilities pertaining to animation, math, pertaining to financial calculations. Anything you can think of, you can program with JavaScript. So, with this single hello world, or whatever you'd like to add to this script, you can go ahead and start manipulating the document object model in whatever way you'd like. And as we continue on with the series, we'll show you how to utilize JavaScript specifically within the scope of web development, and how you can make it make your website feel not only a lot smoother, but a lot more professional, and you can really just have some fun with it. So with that, we'll end today's episode, and until next week, have a nice week.